All right, go.
My presentation is about the difference between formal and informal writings. After reading a writing, it might be obvious to a lot of people whether it's a formal or informal paper, but the things that make it an informal or formal paper are a little bit more complex. So I'm just going to run through a bunch of examples of the differences between them, and then I'm going to give you guys some examples, and you can tell me whether it's part of a formal writing or informal, and why. Okay, colloquial speech is regularly used in informal writings, and this includes examples such as like dude, a lot, crazy. They're like unprofessional words, but in formal writings, colloquial speech is not allowed, and they should be replaced with like more professional words, such as like man, extraordinary. The use of contradictions is also not allowed in formal writings. Some examples include words like can't, won't, and should be replaced in formal writings by words like cannot or will not. Formal writings are primarily written in the third person, with exception to business writings, where it might be necessary to write in the first person. This is not true for informal writings, as you may use any writings how you wish, whether it be in the first, second, or third person. In formal writings, you are not allowed to address a person with a second person's pronoun, such as you or your, and you should replace it with words such as ones. In formal writings, use abbreviations such as TV and photo, but in formal writings, you should use the full words such as television or photograph. Informal writings also use an active voice in writing, but in formal writings, like the papers we write, it's usually written in the passive voice. Like examples of these include we eat a pizza, that would be in the active voice, but the passive use should be used in informal writings. Also, informal writings are sometimes comprised of shorter and less complex sentences, while the formal writings, such as the essays we write, are mostly analytical and longer sentences. So now, I just wrote 2 sentences on the board. The first sentence was pretty long, so I just wrote the only relevant part of it. So can you tell me, would this be a part of a formal or informal writing, and why? Anybody?
Informal.
And why?
We use carrot.
And the second part? Anybody? Yeah.
Formal.
And why?
Because you use television instead of TV.
Yeah, so there's no abbreviations in here, so it'll be a formal writing. The previously mentioned examples and everything I just showed you, they're used in formal writings such as business letters, essays, and research papers, and sometimes business proposals. But the examples I showed you for the informal writings are used, there are some examples in them are letters, personal messages, and emails. Sometimes, however, it is okay to use informal techniques in special situations where your writing will otherwise be formal. And an example of this would be like a business letter, because sometimes they require you to get to the point because they just want the information, and you using like longer analytical sentences wouldn't be necessary. Yeah, that's it.
Can you give an example of passive voice?
It was observed that pizza was eaten.
And then can you give the class again the example of the active voice of that sentence?
We ate pizza.
Job.